Welcome back, guys. Today I am doing a video on the difference between the Quantum and the Quantum Ursus. So I've been on a Shirogorov binge lately, and in that binge I got interested in the model the Quantum. Now I couldn't really find what the difference between the normal Quantum, which is this one, and the Quantum Ursus. I knew that the Quantum Ursus was kind of the budget offering by Shirogorov, kind of the everyman's Shirogorov, definitely one of the cheaper knives that they offer. Ursus means common bear, which kind of indicates that. And so far, I think they only have a Quantum Ursus. I believe they're going to do some other Shiros in the in the Ursus trim package. But I knew that these shared a name, the Quantum and the Quantum Ursus, but they weren't the same knife, or at least I thought that was the case. This is definitely more expensive. This is almost twice the price as the Ursus, but I was really curious about the actual difference. I was kind of obsessing over, like, well, I want to experience the real Quantum. So, of course, what did I do? I tracked down both. So this was from a trade from Rob, and I found this one on Recon 1. Sold some knives to pay for it. So this is the Quantum Ursus in the Monkey Edge frag pattern, which Monkey Edge is a company that they work with a bunch of brands, and they have this pattern that's specific to them, and it is in Chromax. And then this is the Quantum Gen 2. The Gen 2, there's only two generations of the Quantum so far, the Gen 2 and the Gen 1. Outside of the Ursus, of course, there's a bunch of versions of the Quantum Ursus. There's some minor differences between the two, mainly blade stock and then the milling pattern that they use. So this is the second generation. So the most recent generation, I believe this came out in 2019. So let's look at the more obvious differences of the two. So first of all, you have your pivot. Obviously, the normal Quantum has a large pivot. The Quantum Ursus has the small pivot. There is the fuller. So the normal Quantum has a fuller, and the Ursus has no fuller. And with that fuller, you actually have a slightly different blade profile on the top because there's more material there to allow for that fuller. Then obviously there are steel differences, since this is the more budget orientated one. This is in Chromax PM, which is a tool steel, and then this is in the standard Shirogorov M390. There's also the difference of the backspacer. The Quantum has a backspacer. The Quantum Ursus has just a standoff, and then these funky dowels. I've seen that a couple times on other knives. I don't really understand the F95 Monkey Edge frag pattern that I have doesn't have the dowels, so I don't know why they have it on the Quantum. Maybe it's a structural thing. Maybe that handle radius is a little bit too far, and there was kind of a little bit of flex there. But so they have those dowels. Well, whatever. Not a big fan, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. The other obvious difference is the lanyard hole, which is just in the side of the handle, on one handle on the Ursus. And in the non-Ursus Quantum, it is integrated into the backspacer. Then obviously there is the milling differences. This is, milled out with a cool mixed finishes on the handle. So you can see it's got this kind of brushed titanium look here, and then the blasted look, highlighting the pockets that are milled out on both sides. Really looks fantastic. And then it also has the milled out flipper tab as opposed to the non-milled out flipper tab. And then one of the most significant differences is that there's actually a tiny bit of contouring on the standard Quantum. These parts here have a slight angle to them, so it feels like this knife fills the hand a little bit better than the Quantum Ursus, but marginally better. Like, not marginally better. This one does feel flat, but there's no hot spots or anything in the, like on the Ursus version. It feels great in the hand, but this feels marginally better in the hand. So I think those are all the obvious differences. You know, I haven't seen any videos of these side by side. I'm sure there are some, but I'm going to just talk about some of the less obvious differences. One is actually the blade shape. So the blade shape is this kind of clip point on both of them, but the normal Quantum has a little bit more belly to the blade. It's going to be kind of hard to tell, but the blade comes down a little bit more and sweeps up a little bit more aggressively on the standard Quantum, whereas the Ursus is basically flat, almost flat back. So let's see if I can show that in a better way. It's hard to get both of these in focus while holding them. See how the normal Quantum has a little bit more belly? So that's one difference. Another difference between the two is actually the lock bar axis. The standard Quantum has a little bit more aggressive milling here or angle of milling to have the lock bar axis be slightly better. It also has texturing on the actual lock bar for when you go to disengage it, which is noticeable for the accessibility. This still has angle on it, but there is no milling. It's a little bit less of an aggressive angle, so I feel like the access to the lock bar is better on the standard Quantum. There are a few more things that that are differences between the knives that are not as obvious at first blush. One that I found interesting is actually the gap between the lock bar and the handle. This, you know, cutout slit is a little bit narrower on the Ursus. I don't know what the reasoning behind that is. I'm not a knife maker, so I mean, I don't know if you can tell on camera, but it is a tiny bit narrower on the Ursus, like fraction of a millimeter. It is just an interesting thing that you wouldn't notice unless you saw them side by side for sure. The other big difference that I will say, not big difference, the other difference that I will say that you have to have both of them in hand to notice is the detent difference. So both of these have great action. They both run on MRBS, multi-row bearing system, and they both, you know, are drop set. The Ursus definitely has a more, it definitely has a harder detent. It's not a bad detent, as I totally get funky with that detent ramp, but it's not a bad detent, but it's definitely a harder detent. And because of that, it actually flies out a little harder, I feel like, because there's more potential energy when you finally break that detent. This feels like it was tuned for this exact knife. This feels like someone spent a good 30 minutes or an hour, a couple hours tuning this detent for this knife. So it actually, I think, fires less hard, but it fires smoother. It feels like it's built directly for or tuned directly for this specific knife. So it definitely feels nicer. Now, an interesting thing about these knives is actually the weight. These knives weigh identical to the gram. They weigh 121 grams each, or about 4.26 ounces. So they really are identical in weight, but I think the standard Quantum feels lighter. And I think that's because there's more aggressive milling, because if you look at these knives, it appears to be that there's more material in the standard Quantum than the Quantum Ursus, especially with that big backspacer. So they make up for that by what I assume is more aggressive milling on the inside of the standard Quantum, because both of these knives are in fact milled on the inside, but that's the only weight saving spot that I could see in the Quantum. And I haven't had these apart, so I can't, measure that distance. But, the fact that they weigh identical, and this, I think it looks a tiny bit thicker to my eyes, the standard Quantum. So it looks like this has more material, but they weigh the same. And because of that, because this also feels chunkier, I feel like, or looks chunkier and feels chunkier in the hand, it feels lighter. It's hard to describe unless you've held a dense small knife as opposed to a light small knife, or a knife that you kind of expect the way, as a collector, you start to expect things to feel a certain way. So even though they weigh the same, this feels like it's lighter, and there definitely appears to be more material, which leads me to believe that the milling on the inside of this one is more aggressive. So all that to be said, which one's worth it? Are they, do you have to have the standard Quantum to have the Quantum experience? Honestly, I would say no. I mean, this knife they're both fantastic knives. This knife, though, is 85% of this knife for half the price. So it turns into this numbers game, right? As a collector, I love esoteric things. I love things that, feel better than other things. But even like the feeling difference between the two, it's not like you're not experiencing the Quantum with this knife. You're experiencing the Quantum with both of these knives, and that is not saying that this is not an incredible knife, the standard Quantum. I think it's more saying that this Quantum Ursus is a home run. This is a really, really good knife, and especially for the price, you're getting a huge value out of the Ursus. Is the Quantum better? Yes. The non-Ursus Quantum is in fact better. It feels more refined. It feels very perfect in every way. But this doesn't feel imperfect. It just feels less good than this, but not half as good as this. Not even close. You get the Quantum experience with the Quantum Ursus without having to track down and find and pay for a full Quantum. Now, this looks better, definitely has more refinement, like I said, and this is a little bit more standard, but it feels fantastic. You're getting the full Quantum experience by having the Ursus. This honestly feels like a blank of this. Like, this feels like they got 85% of the way done with this knife, and then they pulled it off the line instead of doing the finishing details. But they'd done all the important stuff first with this. So I really, honestly, if you want to experience a Quantum, if you just get a Quantum Ursus, you're not going to miss out by not getting a Quantum, like a standard Quantum. Now, as a crazy collector, I'm going to keep both because this is really beautiful and cool and looks fantastic. I mean, that's a freaking cool knife, Those details are absolutely beautiful. But if you're not me and you don't need two Quantums, or you can't afford to have both Quantums or whatever, you're not really missing out that much by just having the Ursus. It's an incredibly good value knife. And again, I'm not speaking poorly of the Quantum. I just think the Ursus is that good. The comparison that I like to use for the two actually is just getting like cars of a different trim package. This is a 335, a BMW 335i, and this is a BMW 335i M Sport. You're just getting the upgraded, little things, the alloy wheels, the, leather seats, the seat warmers, all those things. But they are the same car. At the end of the day, they are the same car. They're both really good. This one's just a little bit more refined. And it's not double as refined as this one. I'd say that the Quantum Ursus is 85% of the knife that the standard Quantum is. So that's that. I mean, I just think it's really interesting to compare two knives, one budget version, one standard version, to each other, especially because I was really curious about the difference myself. So I hope that helped you out if you're looking at these and trying to figure out the difference between them. I mean, you're not going to be disappointed. These are both incredible knives. I love both of them. They, you know, just really knocked it out of the park with the Quantum in general. I think they're just totally gorgeous knives, and this blade shape is super utilitarian. I'm really enjoying the clip point. It's just low enough to feel like it's a drop point, but has enough belly to feel like it's a kind of a more clip point knife. I don't know how to describe that. I'm doing weird things with my hands now too. It's a really good EDC shape. So I hope that helped. If you're looking at both of these knives, they're both fantastic. You're not going to go wrong. But if you had to choose one for the value, honestly, choose the Ursus. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will catch you on the next one.